The ocean swallows secrets. Beneath its endless blue veil, empires have vanished, mountains have sunk, and time itself seems to stop. But there is one name, one legend, that refuses to die. Atlantis. A city said to have gleamed brighter than gold, filled with knowledge beyond human understanding, before it disappeared beneath the waves in a single day and night. Was it a myth born from Plato's imagination, or the memory of a real place lost to cataclysm? Every century, explorers, scientists, and dreamers claim they've found it. Some say in the depths of the Atlantic, others in the frozen wastelands of Antarctica. But what if Atlantis never truly vanished? What if it's still out there, hidden in plain sight, waiting for us to remember? It began with a story, one written over 2,000 years ago. The Greek philosopher Plato described an island civilization so advanced, it rivaled even the gods. Its people were powerful, its architecture magnificent, and its wisdom unparalleled. Yet as quickly as it rose, it was consumed by the sea. For centuries, this tale has haunted human imagination. Was Plato warning us or recording a forgotten history? From the depths of the Mediterranean to the peaks of South America, the quest for Atlantis has become a global obsession. Each discovery, each clue, seems to pull us closer to the truth. And yet, just as the answers appear within reach, they dissolve like footprints in the sand. Before we uncover the truth behind the world's most enduring mystery, make sure you subscribe to History Vault, where the past comes alive, and the secrets of time are brought to light. Now, let's dive beneath the waves and search for the lost city of Atlantis. Among the more radical theories is the idea that Atlantis was not only advanced, but globally influential, that it was the heart of a prehistoric network connecting civilizations before recorded history. Proponents point to the similarities between ancient monuments built oceans apart, the pyramids of Egypt and those of Central America, the alignment of temples to celestial patterns, the common use of megalithic architecture. They argue that such parallels cannot be coincidence, that knowledge once unified humanity before it was lost in a great cataclysm. To them, Atlantis was that unifying source, the seed of civilization itself. Mainstream archaeologists reject such notions, attributing these similarities to independent invention. Human beings, after all, share the same instincts, to worship the heavens, to build toward the sky, to create monuments that outlast their makers. Yet even in the face of reason, the allure of the Atlantean theory endures. The possibility that our history might extend further back than textbooks allow is too powerful to ignore. It offers not only mystery, but meaning, a sense that we are part of a grander cycle of rise and fall, wisdom and forgetting. In the mid-20th century, new voices gave the legend a modern face. Edgar Cayce, the American mystic known as the Sleeping Prophet, claimed to have visions of Atlantis as a technologically advanced society that mastered energy crystals, flight, and weapons of unimaginable power. He predicted that parts of Atlantis would re-emerge near the Bahamas in the late 20th century. When the Bimini Road was discovered soon after, his followers declared it proof of his prophecy. Others went further, suggesting that Atlantis was linked to extraterrestrial beings, that its sudden disappearance was the result of cosmic forces or divine retribution. Though science found no evidence to support these ideas, they found fertile ground in popular culture, ensuring that the myth of Atlantis never slept for long. More recently, a new theory has emerged, one that places Atlantis at the bottom of the world. Proponents of the so-called Antarctica hypothesis argue that the frozen continent was once home to a temperate civilization before a pole shift buried it under ice. They cite ancient maps like the 16th century Peary race chart, which appears to depict Antarctica without ice, as evidence that early humans, or someone before them, had knowledge of its geography long before modern discovery. While geologists dismiss this as misinterpretation, the theory continues to spark debate, illustrating how every new piece of data becomes fuel for the legend's endurance. Amid these competing visions, one truth becomes clear. Atlantis has transcended the limits of myth to become a mirror for humanity's eternal questions. It is no longer just a place, it is an idea. It embodies both our potential and our peril, our brilliance and our blindness. It asks whether we are doomed to repeat the same pattern that destroyed the Atlanteans, a rise to greatness followed by collapse through our own arrogance. In that sense, Atlantis serves not only as a story of the past, but as a warning for the future. Perhaps that is why the legend resonates so deeply in the modern world. As technology advances faster than we can control it, as climate change threatens to rewrite the geography of our own planet, the tale of Atlantis feels less like fantasy and more like prophecy. The image of a proud civilization, confident in its mastery of nature, only to be undone by its own excess, reflects our own age with haunting precision. We build towers into the clouds and cities across the seas. But beneath it all lies the same fragility that doomed the island Plato wrote about millennia ago. In the end, the question of whether Atlantis existed may matter less than what it represents. For some, it is a lost chapter of history waiting to be proven. For others, it is a myth crafted to teach humility. For all, it remains a reminder that the line between myth and memory is often thinner than we think. Perhaps there was once a place, a real Atlantis, buried beneath centuries of ocean and sediment. Or perhaps Atlantis lives not beneath the waves, but within the collective memory of humankind, a timeless parable of creation, ambition, and loss. And maybe that is the true secret of Atlantis. It endures because it was never meant to be found. It is not a city waiting for discovery, but a story waiting for understanding. Every time a diver descends into the dark waters, every time a researcher scans the ocean floor, every time someone reads Plato's words and dares to dream, the legend breathes again. Atlantis may have been lost to the sea, but it was never lost to us. It lives in every question we ask about where we came from and where we are going. It is the shadow of our past and the reflection of our future, forever just out of reach, forever calling from beneath the waves. Perhaps Atlantis was never meant to be found, not because it is lost, but because it exists everywhere and nowhere at once. Maybe the real secret lies in humanity's obsession with what was, and what could be again, a reflection of our own rise and fall, mirrored in the myth of a civilization that reached too high, too fast, and paid the price for its pride. As waves crash over forgotten ruins and ancient sands shift to reveal new secrets, one question continues to echo through time. Was Atlantis a warning left for us, or a doorway waiting to be reopened? Somewhere beneath the deep blue silence of the oceans, something ancient may still be breathing, watching, waiting to rise again. And if it does, will we recognize it before it's too late? Because the truth about Atlantis might not lie in the past at all. It may lie just ahead, buried beneath the waters we think we know so well. In the 20th century, the invention of sonar, deep-sea diving equipment, and later satellite imaging gave the search new momentum. In 1968, a discovery near Bimini Island in the Bahamas set the world abuzz. Divers exploring the shallow waters found a strange, rectangular formation of massive limestone blocks laid out like a paved road. It extended for hundreds of feet under the sea, perfectly aligned, as though made by human hands. They called it the Bimini Road. Newspapers hailed it as proof of Atlantis. Some claimed it was part of a harbor. Others said it was the city's main street. The excitement was contagious. Photographs of the submerged stones spread around the world, fueling endless speculation. But skeptics were quick to respond. Geologists studied the formation and declared it to be natural, an example of beach rock fractured by erosion, not human architecture. The stones, they said, had simply cracked along straight lines due to the natural expansion of minerals. Yet the believers were undeterred. They argued that nature could not have created something so symmetrical, so deliberate. The debate between science and myth reignited, as it always does whenever the unknown teases us with patterns we want to see. The rise of new technologies only deepened the intrigue. With satellite mapping of the ocean floor in the late 20th and early 21st centuries, strange shapes began to appear, grid-like patterns, rectangular shadows, symmetrical ridges beneath the Atlantic. Internet forums and independent researchers claimed these were remnants of massive structures buried under sediment. Some even declared they had found the city itself near the Canary Islands, or deep in the Caribbean basin. But when experts reviewed the data, the truth was less romantic. The patterns, they explained, were caused by the stitching of sonar scans from different satellite passes. Yet, despite being debunked, the images still linger in the minds of those who want to believe. While some searched the Atlantic, others began to look closer to home, in the Mediterranean. Here, real archaeological evidence began to blur the line between myth and history. The island of Santorini, once known as Thera, was home to an advanced Bronze Age civilization, the Minoans. Around 1600 BCE, Thera erupted with cataclysmic force, one of the largest volcanic explosions in recorded history. The blast sent waves towering hundreds of feet high crashing into Crete, obliterating coastal settlements and blanketing the region in ash. The Minoan civilization, known for its art, palaces, and maritime power, vanished almost overnight. When archaeologists uncovered the buried city of Akrotiri beneath layers of ash, they found streets, frescoes, and buildings preserved in haunting detail, echoes of life frozen in time. Many began to wonder, could this be Plato's Atlantis? The parallels were striking, a powerful island civilization destroyed suddenly by natural disaster. The imagery of fire, earthquakes, and floods matched Plato's description almost too perfectly. Yet there was one problem. Plato placed Atlantis beyond the Pillars of Heracles, west of the Mediterranean, while Thera lies within it. The geographic detail clashed, forcing researchers to either reinterpret Plato's words or search elsewhere. Still, the Minoan theory remains one of the most respected among scholars. It suggests that Plato's account may have been inspired by collective memory, a story passed down for centuries about the day the sea rose and swallowed an island whole. Perhaps Plato reshaped that memory into an allegory, giving it moral and philosophical meaning. But for many seekers, the legend was far too grand to be contained by Greece alone. Another compelling possibility emerged beneath the North Sea. Thousands of years ago, a landmass known as Doggerland connected Britain to mainland Europe. It was a fertile plain, home to human settlements, rivers, and forests. But around 8,000 years ago, rising sea levels drowned it completely. The remnants of trees, tools, and bones still lie buried beneath the seabed, discovered by fishermen and dredgers. To some, Doggerland represents the real Atlantis, a once flourishing world lost to the relentless advance of the ocean. The mystery only deepened as underwater discoveries multiplied. Off the coast of Japan, the submerged structures of Yonaguni astonished divers with their sharp steps and terraces that seemed too precise to be natural. In India's Gulf of Kambat, sonar scans revealed vast geometric formations under 120 feet of water. In the Mediterranean, ruins near Malta and off the coast of Spain hinted at ancient settlements now long drowned. Each finding seemed to whisper of civilizations swallowed by the sea. The fascination with Atlantis persisted because it fit perfectly with human nature's thirst for lost knowledge. The idea that humanity once reached great heights, only to fall, touches something deep in our collective psyche. The notion that remnants of that glory still lie hidden beneath the waves gives us hope that our past is greater than we remember. The search is not only about archaeology or geography, it's about identity, about where we come from and what we've forgotten. In the 20th century, even more speculative theories emerged. Some connected Atlantis to extraterrestrial intervention, claiming that its technological superiority stemmed from contact with otherworldly beings. Others tied it to psychic revelations and mystical traditions. Edgar Cayce, the so-called sleeping prophet, claimed that fragments of Atlantis would be discovered in the Bahamas in the late 20th century. When the Bimini Road appeared, many saw it as the fulfillment of that prophecy. The legend continued to weave itself into every new discovery, every strange anomaly. Yet, through all the claims, denials, and rediscoveries, one truth stands unshaken. The story of Atlantis has endured not because we have found it, but because we haven't. It is the pursuit itself that gives it power. Each expedition into the deep ocean, each satellite image revealing strange patterns, each crumbling ruin unearthed beneath the sea feeds the same ancient longing. The desire to uncover a lost world, perhaps the reason Atlantis continues to draw us in is because it reflects our deepest questions about humanity. How old are we truly? How advanced could we have been before the records of history began? Could we too meet the same fate if arrogance blinds us as it once blinded the Atlanteans? The search for Atlantis is, in truth, the search for ourselves, a reminder that what is lost may yet be found, and that the boundaries between myth and reality are far thinner than we dare to imagine. Atlantis today exists somewhere between imagination and inquiry, a symbol woven through the very fabric of human curiosity. As the centuries have passed, the story has evolved from Plato's moral allegory into one of the greatest enigmas of all time, a puzzle that refuses to fade, because it speaks to something far deeper than geography or archaeology. It speaks to the human longing for lost knowledge, for proof that once, long ago, we were more advanced, more enlightened, more extraordinary than we are now. Each generation reshapes Atlantis in its own image. A vanished utopia for the philosophers, a prehistoric super-civilization for explorers, an alien colony for mystics, a warning for the modern age. And still, the question endures. Was it ever real, or are we chasing a reflection of ourselves? Scientists, historians, and theorists have all tried to answer that question, though each has come away with something different. For some, Atlantis is a geological mystery waiting to be solved. They point to the end of the last ice age, when rising sea levels consumed millions of square miles of habitable land. Entire coastlines were redrawn. What had once been valleys and plains became the ocean floor. In that chaos of melting glaciers and shifting tectonic plates, countless settlements must have vanished without a trace. Even now, divers uncover the ruins of ancient cities that once stood above the surface, proof that history has literally been swallowed by the sea. If such places could disappear so completely, why not Atlantis? Marine archaeologists have already found examples that mirror Plato's descriptions of sudden destruction. Pavlopetra in Greece, Dwarka off the coast of India, and Heraklion in Egypt all rest beneath shallow waters, each bearing the marks of catastrophe. Pavlopetri dates back over 5,000 years, with streets, courtyards, and tombs preserved beneath sand and silt. Dwarka, associated with the legendary kingdom of Krishna, was thought to be myth until sonar scans revealed vast geometric ruins on the seabed. Heraklion, once the gateway to ancient Egypt, lay hidden for centuries under layers of mud before being discovered near Alexandria. These discoveries have blurred the line between myth and memory. If cities we thought imaginary have resurfaced from the depths, how can we dismiss Atlantis so easily? But for others, Atlantis was never just one place. It was a memory scattered across the world, its fragments living on in different forms, each culture preserving its own version of the same story. Across the globe, ancient myths describe golden ages that ended in flood, fire, or divine punishment. The Aztecs told of Aztlan, a homeland across the sea. The Celts spoke of High Brazil, an island that appears once every 7 years before vanishing again. In the Pacific, legends of Lemuria tell of a lost continent swallowed by the ocean. The names change, but the essence remains. A world lost to water, a paradise undone by pride. Perhaps these are not separate tales, but echoes of a shared ancestral trauma, remembered differently across continents divided by time. The legend of Atlantis begins with the writings of a man whose ideas shaped the foundation of Western thought, Plato. Around 360 BCE, in the twilight of classical Greece, he penned 2 dialogues that would forever alter humanity's imagination, Timaeus and Critias. Within their ancient lines lay a story so vivid, so mysterious, that scholars have debated it for over 2 millennia. In these dialogues, Plato spoke of an island civilization beyond the Pillars of Heracles, the ancient name for the Strait of Gibraltar. It was, he said, a world of unmatched beauty and power, greater than any empire Greece had ever known. He called it Atlantis. Plato described the Atlanteans as descendants of the god Poseidon, who fell in love with a mortal woman named Clito. On a mountain rising from the heart of the island, Poseidon built a palace surrounded by concentric rings of land and sea. It was a marvel of engineering and design, protected by moats of shimmering water and connected by bridges of polished stone. Within those rings, life flourished. There were temples adorned with gold, walls plated in silver and orichalcum, a mysterious metal said to shine brighter than fire. There were gardens, fountains, and statues that captured the glory of gods and men alike. To Plato, Atlantis was a utopia, a civilization guided by divine wisdom and order. Yet beneath this perfection, pride began to stir. Over time, the Atlanteans, once noble and just, grew consumed by greed. Their hunger for power spread across the seas as they sought to dominate all known lands. Plato wrote that they waged war against the peoples of the Mediterranean, even challenging the mighty city of Athens. But hubris, as always, carried a price. The gods, angered by their arrogance, unleashed their wrath. In a single day and night of misfortune, earthquakes and floods consumed Atlantis, dragging the entire island into the depths of the ocean. For centuries, philosophers have wondered, was this merely a parable? A moral story meant to warn of the dangers of pride and corruption? Or was Plato recounting a fragment of real history, a memory of a world erased by catastrophe? The question has haunted historians, scientists, and dreamers alike. Plato himself claimed that his story was not invention but tradition, passed down through generations. He wrote that his account came from Solon, a Greek statesman who had visited Egypt 200 years earlier. There, in the temple of Sais, Egyptian priests told him of an ancient civilization that had vanished 9,000 years before his time. According to them, this mighty empire once ruled the Atlantic and beyond, until it was swallowed by the sea. If this chronology is accurate, Atlantis would have existed around 11,000 years ago, at the end of the last ice age. During that time, much of the Earth's water was locked in vast sheets of ice, and as they melted, sea levels rose dramatically. Entire coastlines disappeared beneath the ocean, reshaping the world's geography. It was an age of violent change. Earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, and floods that could easily have erased entire civilizations. Could Atlantis have been one of them? Some researchers suggest that Plato's account could have preserved the memory of such a disaster. They point to the global myths of floods and deluges that appear in nearly every ancient culture. The Sumerians spoke of a great flood that destroyed humanity, saved only by a man named Ziusudra. The Hebrews told the story of Noah and his ark. The Mesopotamians wrote of Utnapishtim in the Epic of Gilgamesh. Even in faraway lands, among the Aztecs, the Chinese, and the tribes of the Pacific, stories of a world drowned by water persist. Could these tales all stem from the same event, remembered differently across ages and continents? If so, Atlantis might not have been a myth, but a memory, a collective echo of a civilization that vanished when the seas rose. Yet the question remains, where exactly was it? The possibilities span continents. Some believe Atlantis lies just beyond the Strait of Gibraltar, beneath the sands and swamps of southern Spain. In the Donana National Park, satellite images have revealed strange circular patterns, rings that eerily match Plato's description. Could these be the remnants of the fabled city's concentric design? Geologists have found evidence that this region was once struck by massive tsunamis, possibly triggered by earthquakes. The devastation could have wiped out any trace of an ancient settlement, leaving behind only whispers in the soil. Others turn their attention westward, to the vast expanse of the Atlantic Ocean itself. Plato's description of Atlantis as a massive island larger than Libya and Asia combined has led many to look for clues on the ocean floor. Some explorers claim that the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, a mountain chain running through the center of the ocean, could have once been land before sinking beneath the waves. The Azores, a group of islands west of Portugal, sit atop this ridge. Some believe they are the surviving peaks of Atlantis, all that remains of a once great empire. But the theories do not end there. Some argue that Plato's Atlantic might not refer to the ocean at all, but to regions once known as the Atlantic lands, the western coasts of Africa and Europe, or even parts of the Mediterranean. A few have suggested Sardinia, whose ancient ruins and mysterious Nurag towers might hint at a forgotten civilization. Others point to the Caribbean, where underwater formations near Cuba and the Bahamas have stirred speculation of man-made structures now covered in coral and sand. And then, there is the most audacious theory of all, that Atlantis lies buried beneath Antarctica. Advocates of this idea claim that thousands of years ago, before a catastrophic shift in Earth's crust, the continent was located farther north, lush, temperate, and habitable. When the poles shifted, it was thrust into the freezing south, entombing whatever once stood there beneath miles of ice. Satellite imagery has revealed geometric anomalies beneath the surface, shapes some interpret as ruins of colossal architecture. Though mainstream science dismisses this theory as pseudoscience, it continues to captivate the imagination of millions. Amid all this speculation, the mystery deepens rather than resolves. For every claim of discovery, contradictions emerge. Dates do not align. Geological evidence conflicts. Ancient texts, where they exist at all, are open to interpretation. Atlantis seems to exist in a realm between fact and faith where history meets mythology. Yet its power endures. What keeps this legend alive is not proof but possibility. The idea that a civilization could rise to unimaginable heights, only to vanish overnight, touches something primal in us. It reflects our own fears and ambitions, our recognition that even the grandest creations of humankind can be undone in an instant. Perhaps the reason Atlantis refuses to die is that it holds a mirror to the human story itself. We rise, we build, we reach for greatness, and we fall. Whether Atlantis was a real city swallowed by the sea, a poetic allegory, or an echo of forgotten worlds, its story continues to call to us across the ages. Somewhere, beneath the depths or within the mind, it waits. Every age rediscovers it anew, every generation searching for the same answer that haunted Plato. Did Atlantis ever truly exist? Or was it never lost because it was never real? Whatever the truth may be, one thing is certain. The legend of Atlantis marks the beginning of humanity's greatest mystery. And like all great mysteries, it begins with a story told long ago, a story that dares us to look into the abyss and wonder what lies beneath. The search for Atlantis did not begin in modern times, but the obsession with proving its existence took on new life in the age of discovery and science. When explorers first mapped the globe, the unknown depths of the ocean seemed like gateways to forgotten worlds. The Atlantic, vast and dark, became the most likely grave for the fabled city. By the 19th century, with the rise of archaeology and geology, a new wave of curiosity began to surge. The myth of Atlantis was no longer a fable for philosophers. It became a challenge to be solved, a mystery waiting to be uncovered by those bold enough to look beneath the waves. One man who reignited the quest was Ignatius Donnelly, an American congressman turned writer. In 1882, he published a book titled Atlantis, The Antediluvian World, and its impact was immediate. Donnelly argued that Atlantis was not merely Plato's invention, but the birthplace of all ancient civilizations. He claimed that after Atlantis sank, its survivors spread across the world, seeding the cultures of Egypt, Mesoamerica, and Mesopotamia. According to him, the similarities between pyramids in Egypt and those of the Maya, or between flood myths across continents, were not coincidences. They were traces of a shared ancestry. Donnelly's words electrified the imagination of his readers. Suddenly, Atlantis wasn't just a lost city, it was the origin of humanity's greatness, the mother of all civilizations. Though scientists of his time dismissed Donnelly's theories as romantic speculation, his influence was profound. His ideas paved the way for countless explorers, mystics, and pseudo-archaeologists to take up the quest. The Atlantic Ocean, once a symbol of mystery, became a laboratory of dreams. Adventurers set sail, convinced they could locate the ruins of the sunken empire. And as technology advanced, so did the ambition to find it.